Welcome to Malifaux University. In response to feedback from players, observations of how models are used, and the discovery of innovative applications of the rules, Wyrd annually updates the rules in a document called the Errata. While the name implies corrections to errors, it's better to think of it as balancing the scales. This video will explain simply how the February 2022 Errata changed the models, and will present them in the order they appeared in the Errata document. Another video explains the rules changes. Since this will be neither a strategic analysis nor an opinion piece on the changes, your personal insight and feedback is welcome in the comments. Archinists. Moleman. This minion received several changes. On the front of its card, its health increased from 4 to 5. Its previous unimpeded ability has been upgraded to favorable terrain, which now gives it cover when it's in severe terrain or near impassable terrain. The burrow resistance trigger is unchanged, and network of tunnels is the same as well. However, the Moleman now has two new unique abilities no other model has. Rough Ground lets the Moleman treat friendly scheme markers like severe terrain, which will give it cover thanks to the favorable terrain ability. Enemy models will treat the scheme markers as severe terrain as well. We'll come back to Through the Mountain in a minute. On the back of the Moleman's card, the Claw's melee attack is unchanged. However, now the Moleman has two bonus actions, and they both let it drop tunnel markers, which count as severe terrain. With no other details, they are assumed to be 30 millimeters. Dig Deep lets you drop a tunnel marker within 1 inch of the Moleman. The model had tunneling before, but now the range is shortened from 10 inches to 8, and has a stat 5 with a target number of 8, so you need to flip only a 3 to make it happen. Previously, you had to target a scheme marker within range, but now you can target scheme markers or any marker that counts as terrain, including the new tunnel markers or even strategy markers. This could also apply to pit trap markers, piano markers, underbrush markers, or any other marker with terrain traits. But since it says terrain markers, you cannot target ordinary terrain on the table. It has to be a marker. As before, the Moleman gets to place itself in base contact with the target, but if you flip a mask when you perform this simple duel, you get to immediately drop a tunnel marker within 1 inch of the Moleman before you move the model to the target marker. As it drops more of these markers, the Molemen in your crew will be able to skip across the playing area from marker to marker. These tunnel markers do not have the destructible trait, so it would take a special action or ability that allows you to remove markers to get rid of them. Back to the front. The Through the Mountain ability isn't for the Moleman, but for members of its crew. During friendly models' activations, regardless of where they are on the table, size 0, 1, or 2 models, or any friendly model with the Beast characteristic, can remove a tunnel marker within 1 inch to take the Moleman's tunneling bonus action, letting them place into base contact with another terrain marker or scheme marker within 8 inches, ignoring line of sight. The other models cannot declare the Diggin' Holes trigger though, so think of it as the tunnel collapsing behind them as they go. Since this is a bonus action, the other models would not be able to use tunneling if they have already performed their own bonus actions during their activations. Rasputina. Rasputina received many little tweaks that add up to an overall significant change. For starters, her defense stat increased from 4 to 5. Her Harsh Winter ability was enhanced to now deny enemy models cover from Ice Pillar markers. Ice Shield was renamed Sub-Zero Shield, but is otherwise unchanged. Glacial Surge, however, is a new ability unique to Rasputina. If Rasputina is near Ice Pillar markers during her activation, she gets to draw a card after cheating fate or discarding a card. The limit is that she cannot draw more cards than the number of Ice Pillar markers within 8 inches of her, and it's capped at 3 cards. More significant changes are on the back side of her card. For starters, her Frozen Touch melee attack is just gone. This means she has no melee attack at all, and therefore has no engagement range. However, either of her remaining attacks can draw line of sight and range from Ice Pillar markers thanks to her Ice Mirror ability, and if she discards a card in order to declare a trigger, she gets to draw one with her new Glacial Surge ability. Winter's Strike saw a shift in the blast markers with 1 in every variable now. The attack no longer pushes models, but if the blast markers can touch an ice pillar marker, the target of Winter's strike takes +1 damage. This increased damage would not apply to other models within the blast marker, though, since they were not the target of the attack. The mask trigger changed from Onslaught, which let Rasputina take this action again, to Mass Hysteria, which brings the push back and increases it to 3 inches for all models damaged by Winter's strike. This push would apply to the original target and models in the blast marker. Freeze Over also saw significant changes. It is now a simple shockwave attack and no longer can use an ice pillar marker as the shockwave marker. It still requires a target number 14 movement duel to give slow and staggered, but no longer does damage. However, friendly models in the shockwave's range can ignore it and just heal 1. Freeze Over also has 3 new triggers. The Crow gives Cracked Ice, which doubles the range of the shockwave from 1 inch to 2 inches. The mask is no longer Swift Action, but is now Cruelty, which still allows the attack to be repeated, but is now limited to once per turn. The new Ram trigger is Hypothermia, which brings the damage back to the shockwave and makes it 2 points of damage instead of 1. While Freeze Over gained new triggers, Ice Pillars lost 1. Nothing else about Ice Pillars changed, but the mask reposition trigger is no longer there. The Shatter bonus action has been completely replaced by the new December's Passage. Instead of destroying an Ice Pillar marker to damage enemies, December's Passage pushes an Ice Pillar marker up to 4 inches. If you just want to move the marker, it comes with a stat 7 and has a target number 11, so you need only a 4 to make it happen. However, you can add to the target number the size of as many December models within 2 inches of the Ice Pillar marker. If you make it, those models are then placed within 2 inches of where you push the marker, but they can be moved like this only once per turn. Neil Henry. This Enforcer got a few minor changes to the front of his card. His defense increased from 5 to 6. His Sabotage ability has been replaced by the new unique Nail Down. Sabotage let him drop a scheme marker when he killed an enemy construct. Nail Down lets him drop a scrap marker or a scheme marker when he kills any enemy model. The rest of his abilities and stats are unchanged. The back of Neil Henry's card is completely new. Rail Driver has been replaced by Steel Driver, which has the same range, stat, and variable profile as Rail Driver. However, with Rail Driver, you got a bonus to your duel for removing scrap markers within 3 inches. Steel Driver gets a flat +1 to the duel for being within 2 inches of a scrap marker and doesn't remove the marker. The damage also ignores armor, which can make a pretty big difference. Steel Driver keeps the mask and crow triggers from Rail Driver, but leaves out the tome trigger since ignoring armor is already part of the attack. Neil now has the Bulldoze tactical action, introduced in Malifaux Burns with Charles Hoffman, Inventor, and Von Schill, Ironheart. If you're not familiar with it, it lets Neil Henry push his movement stat in any direction, ignoring everything in his way. If he passes through markers, he gets to replace them with scrap markers. If he passes through enemy models, they have to pass a target number 13 movement duel or take 2 damage and gain staggered. His Whirling Hammer tactical action is now the mask trigger on Bulldoze, imposing a negative modifier on enemy models affected by his push. His Reckless bonus action is also replaced by Get to Work. This can push models near a targeted scrap marker towards the scrap marker and heal friendly Foundry models. Bayou. Francois LaCroix. Francois LaCroix got changes front and back that will noticeably affect his gameplay. For starters, Francois is no longer hard to kill. He still has Flinch, Flurry, and The Bigger They Are, but his unique Showdown ability has been replaced by Rapid Reaction, which is unique among Bayou models and is on only one other model's card. This new ability gives him a ram suit to the first opposed duel he takes during his activation, which plays into his strengths because every attack action on his card now has a ram trigger. The ram embedded in his sword stat is removed, so you still need to flip a ram or use a soulstone to put another ram on the flip to get the +2 damage. Gremlin Menace now is restricted to targeting enemy models, but lets Francois ignore other models when he pushes. The new Sudden Strike trigger lets him use his sword when he gets there, too. His new Challenge bonus action is on a handful of other models already, and it forces the target of the action to discard a card before targeting anyone other than Francois with any action. The new showdown trigger on this bonus action is not exactly the old ability which gave Francois a positive modifier, but now it gives negative modifiers to other models attacking Francois, and also to Francois if he attacks anyone other than the model he targeted with challenge. Rami LaCroix. Rami LaCroix saw some ups and downs on his stat card. On the front, his health increased to 7, and so did his soulstone cost. His advanced sights ability, which let him ignore both concealment and friendly fire, has been downgraded to expert shot, which ignores only friendly fire. His clockwork rifle also saw its triggers downgraded. The mask no longer gives swift action, letting him repeat the attack, but is now stagger, giving the staggered condition. The no witnesses trigger has just been removed altogether. His quick retreat bonus action is unchanged. Gautreaux Bokor. These magical minions have a few changes up and down. As a teacher and linguist, I'll point out that Wyrd apparently accidentally spelled Gautreaux correctly on the Errata document, but that correction did not make it onto the new card. Maybe next time. The unique Big Voodoo ability is no longer on the card. Instead, the Gautreaux Bokor are now blast resistant like many other whiz-bang models. The Swamp Spirit's attack is unchanged, but these minions no longer have an obey action at all. The Healing Energy tactical action lost its Deja Vu trigger from the Crow, but Protective Spirits picked up Surge with a tome that lets them draw one card. The new Consolidate Power bonus action pushes another friendly model toward a model in its line of sight, and Big Voodoo shows up here as a trigger from the Crow, giving Focused for the cost of a glowy token. Wong. Wong received 2 changes to the front of his card that make him a little tougher. First, his defense stat went up to 6 from 5, but he also lost the counterspell ability which required enemy models to discard a card before declaring triggers in duels with him. Now he has the unique 3-demon bag, which says enemy models just can't declare triggers in duels with him at all. The back of his card sees other enhancements. The stat on the Iron Fan of Tsu Li attack went up from 5 to 6. Zap is no longer a projectile attack, so now he can use it while engaged, and it also gained an embedded ram in the stat. The attack itself is unchanged in regards to damage, glowy tokens, enemy models, and friendly models. It no longer automatically drops 2 shockwave markers, but the ram in the stat guarantees the new Cataclysm trigger, which does that. The Severe Injury trigger is gone, but the Surge trigger is still an option with a tome and lets Wong draw a card. The Glow bonus action has a new Protective Glow trigger from a Crow that heals whiz-bang models within 6 inches and gives them all glowy tokens. Launch into Space changed a little bit with the text no longer limiting it to a corpse, scrap, or ski marker, but now can be applied to any marker. The text also states clearly that the marker still belongs to whichever crew originally controlled it after it comes back next turn, even in the "wait, what?" trigger that duplicates the marker. So if Wong launches an enemy scheme marker into space and hits the tome trigger, 2 enemy scheme markers are going to come back next turn, though Wong still gets to choose where they go. Swine-Cursed. The biggest change many players noticed with the Swine-Cursed is the change in keyword. Sui is gone, replaced with pig. While this means it no longer fits in with Bo Peep, who has the jockey and Sui keywords, he still fits in with both versions of Ulix Turner and Wong, and now can be hired by Old Major and be affected by actions and abilities that target pig models. Its health increased from 7 to 8, but it lost the magical influence ability. Its demise ability is now restricted to summoning only a Bayou Gremlin, but now adds a damaging shockwave when that gremlin arrives. On the back, the Swine-Cursed has a new ram trigger on its Tusks attack, letting it tear off a bite to heal 2. Heroic Intervention now has an embedded ram which guarantees the new I'm No Coward trigger, and this tactical action targets an enemy model, pushes all friendly models near it 5 inches away, and then essentially has the Swine-Cursed charge the target. The new trigger then gives the Swine-Cursed shielded +1 for each friendly model that got pushed away from the target. Explorers Society. Alpinist. The Alpinist Enforcer received 2 minor tweaks. The climbing gear ability now specifies that the benefits to movement it offers to nearby friendly models applies only when those models start their movement within 4 inches of the Alpinist. On the back, the Tin Feast bonus action no longer has a variable flip and simply heals the Alpinist 2. Intrepid Effigy and Emissary. The Intrepid Effigy and Emissary both received the same minor change to their Aura of Courage bonus action. It no longer includes simple duels or duels generated by friendly actions, but specifically says it applies to friendly models within 3 inches who pass by 2 or more a duel generated by an enemy model. English Ivan. English Ivan received several changes, seemingly to take him down a notch or 2. He no longer has the Umbra keyword, but now has the unique Deal with the Dark ability, which loans him the Umbra keyword when hiring. English Ivan Double Agent still has the Umbra keyword full-time. The range of the Penumbral Converter ability, which switches shadow and scheme markers, was reined in to 2 inches from the previous 6. The only other change on the front of the card is to Sustain Shadows, removing the word Other, since English Ivan is no longer an Umbra keyword model. This may come into play with Gibson DeWalt's Chromatic Aberration attack or the Brocken Spectre's Envelop in Shadow bonus action, both of which mention friendly Umbra models. The Intercision trigger on his Runic Siphon attack now has a target number of 14, even though the attack itself does not. The Black Soulstone projectile attack saw its stat drop from 7 to 6, but its target number also dropped from 13 to 12, so you still need a 6 or better to make it happen. The only other change was to specify that English Ivan himself is unaffected by this attack, along with friendly Umbra models. Nexus. The changes to Nexus seem to be focused on simplifying and clarifying gameplay with this model. On the front of the card, players will notice Nexus is now a size 3 model, up from a size 2. This will naturally affect how line of sight is drawn to and from this model. The Omnipresent Influence ability now has a 12-inch aura instead of a 12-inch range. This will end the conversation over whether or not Nexus needs line of sight to the friendly Cadmus models, since auras do require line of sight to be effective. The triggers on Hive Strike changed a bit. Instead of Siphon Life from a ram, which increases damage by 1 and heals Nexus 1, Tear Off a Bite simply heals Nexus 2 without increasing the damage. The Severe Injury from a crow, which can give the injured condition up to Injured +2, is now Blood Loss, which simply gives Injured +1. Transmutation from the Tome remains unchanged. The Citizens of Malifaux bonus action received several changes. First, the stat increased to 7 from 6, but the target number jumped from 8 to 10. The action still targets friendly scheme or web markers, but instead of any number, it is now limited to no more than 3 markers. The target number still increases by 3 for each marker, so targeting 1 marker makes your target number 13, 2 markers makes it 16, and 3 markers makes it 19, requiring you to flip or cheat in a 12 to succeed in the action. You still summon an Eyes and Ears model for each marker and remove the markers, but now the models you summon are considered to have already activated this turn. No one gets any pass tokens, and the new models get to activate for the first time in the next turn. While we're discussing Nexus, their Will of Cadmus upgrade was also changed quite a bit. The Parasitic Grasp ability says that Cadmus models may treat enemy models with parasite tokens as though they were friendly Cadmus models, but now it is limited to only during friendly activations, and it still doesn't count for schemes or strategies. Formerly, when an enemy model would gain a second parasite token, it would suffer 2 irreducible damage, but now it's simply 2 damage. Armor, incorporeal, and other damage-reducing effects may now apply. Connected Conscience is unchanged, but the Will of Cadmus attack action has been tweaked a little. The target number dropped from 12 to 10, so it's easier to make happen, and the Uncomfortable Twitch trigger from a mask no longer says after resolving, which means it now requires the attack to succeed in order to get this trigger. Archivist. Fans of this model will immediately notice the Archivist no longer has ill omens, which formerly gave a +2 to its crew's initiative flip. However, it now has the unique Dust and Cobwebs ability, which lets it create a 50mm web marker up to 8 inches away every time it activates. The only other changes to the Archivist are in the triggers for its Inaudible Whispers attack. Killer late fees from the Crow still ignores hard-to-kill and demise abilities, but now increases the damage by 1. The Tome Spin Web trigger is gone, since the Archivist has Dust and Cobwebs, but now is Hush, which forces a target number 13 defense duel, or else the target gains a Parasite token. There is also a new Mask trigger, Get In There, which pushes a friendly minion up to 3 inches toward the target. Mikhail XVI. The changes on the front of Mikhail's card relate to his movement. His movement stat increased from 4 to 5. His Chronicle ability no longer lets him place into base contact with the model that heals, but lets him now move up to 5 inches toward that model. Since this is still once per activation, that could happen several times per turn during the activations of different models. On the back of his card, we see that Mikhail's engagement range is reduced from 2 inches to 1 inch with the new range of Koshai, the Epitaph Blade. He can still heal a model within 4 inches of the target though, and that can initiate his Chronicle ability and let him move 5 inches toward that model if he wanted. Entomb and Shrug Off are unchanged, but My Father's Legacy is now restricted to other friendly models and has a different trigger now. Cut Them Down is replaced with Sudden Strike, both of which let him take a melee attack action, but now it requires a ram instead of a mask. Calypso Mark II. Overall, it seems the changes to the Calypso were designed to tone it down a little. The Calypso's defense stat dropped from 6 to 5, and now it's a little less lethal when it explodes. Its demise ability does just 1 damage instead of 2, but is still a 2-inch pulse. The original Creator ability has also been modified to Original Creators. Now, in order to gain the reduced hiring cost on the Calypso, the crew must contain both Dr. Beebe and Maxine Agassi. On the back, the Massive Tentacles trigger was removed from the Thriller Driller tactical action, but still remains on the Mining Tool's melee attack. The target number for the Onward bonus action is still 12, but the action got a little harder with a stat 3 instead of stat 4, so now it takes flipping or cheating in a 9 or better for this to succeed. Cryptologist. The first change to the front of the Cryptologist's card is the wording of the Ancient Technology ability. Previously, whenever a model activated within 4 inches of the Cryptologist, the controller of that model could discard a card to ignore any start of activation effects that model may have. Now, only the opposing player gets to discard a card, even if it's other models in the Cryptologist's crew that are activating. Type "When this model activates" into the Crew Builder app search bar to see some of the abilities Ancient Technology could ignore. The Cryptologist also has the new Rapid Reaction ability, shared only with Francois LaCroix of the Kin keyword. Rapid Reaction adds a tome to the duel of the first opposed duel the Cryptologist has during its activation. On the backside, the Clockwork Arm attack has a new tome trigger, letting this model end a condition on the target of the attack. Cursed Translation now has a positive modifier embedded into its stat and a new tome trigger. Throw Your Arm at him can be used only once per activation, but does 1 damage to both the Cryptologist and the target of the attack, and then drops a scrap marker into base contact with the target. Obviously, the Cryptologist could not declare this trigger if this model is already down to 1 health. The Antique Timepiece bonus action is much simpler now. It no longer requires a duel to happen, and it simply lets a friendly Wastrel model or minion take the bonus action listed on an attached artifact upgrade. These upgrades usually come from Lucas McCabe in one way or another. Brocken Spectre. This Umbra keyword minion got 2 changes. First, it's not terrifying any longer. Maybe it's the Faraday collar, but I guess people just aren't scared of it anymore. The other tweak is to Hallowed Glory. This tactical action forces enemy models within 6 inches of the Spectre to pass a target number 12 movement duel or push 3 inches toward the Spectre. Previously, the action did 2 damage to enemy models that either wound up or that were already in base contact with the Brocken Spectre, while the new wording stipulates that only enemy models that move into base contact with the Spectre suffer the damage. Guild. Orderly. The Orderly model received significant rewrites. It's still hard to wound, but research specimens, restraints, and constriction are all gone. Now the Orderly has the Clingy ability, previously unique to the Umbra keyword Deva model. Clingy affects an enemy model that moves while in base contact with the Orderly. That model must pass a target number 12 movement duel, or else the Orderly gets to place itself into base contact with the model after it finishes the move. Since it's a place and not a push, the Orderly could wind up on the other side of the enemy model too. Since pushing, walking, placing, and flight are all forms of movement, it would take something like burying to escape this effect without taking the movement duel. The new Medical Personnel ability is unique to the Orderly, and means that if an enemy model has a condition, the Orderly is never considered to be engaged by that model. On the backside, the Orderly kept the Emergency Surgery tactical action that lets it heal another model. Necrotic Injection is replaced by Grapple. This increases the Orderly's engagement range from 0 to 1 inch, and can give the staggered condition. If the Orderly hits the Crow Hold Down trigger, another friendly model can take a projectile attack against the target without dealing with friendly fire. Lastly, the Orderly now has a bonus action, Creep Along. If the Orderly flips a 6 or better, he can push up to his movement stat toward a friendly model in line of sight. Thalarian Queller. The Thalarian Queller Witch Hunter minion received a few changes that will surely affect how it is used. It lost the Barrier to the Other World ability, which damages summoned enemy models, but it gained the unique Suppress Magic. This new ability forces an enemy model that uses a Soul Stone within 6 inches of the Queller to discard a card, or else ignore the effect of the Soul Stone. The Queller also gained Gunfighter, which means it now has a 1-inch engagement range, despite not having ordinary melee attacks. Balancing the Gunfighter ability, the Arcane Staff's stat was reduced from 6 to 5, but the triggers and variable profile are unchanged. The Queller lost the Startle bonus action, which gave Staggered, but gained the new Mage Brand attack, which is a simplified version of the Flaming Brand tactical action, and now gives an enemy model adversary for the entire Witch Hunter keyword, and lets a friendly Witch Hunter model push toward the target. The I Didn't Start the Fire bonus action is unchanged, but the new Anti-Magic Field bonus action can prevent enemy models from declaring triggers in opposed duels with the target Witch Hunter model, and this action can target the Thalarian Queller. Neverborn. Changeling. The Changeling has a brand new ability called Sidekick. When the Changeling activates, it can discard a card to place itself into base contact with another friendly Mimic model within 12 inches, as long as that other model isn't a minion. Since that ability happens before the Changeling takes any of its actions, that can open up many interesting targeting opportunities. The back of the Changeling's card is completely new. It no longer has the Just Like You tactical action, which was one of the primary reasons many players hired this model. It now has the Unassuming Demeanor melee attack, giving it a 1-inch engagement range it lacked before. It also has a new bonus action, Take by the Hand. This lets it push a target model and push towards that model, and between this attack and its Sidekick ability, the Changeling might cover considerable distance during its activation. The last new action is the On the Wrong Side tactical action, which can be used only once per turn. It can either simply remove an enemy ski marker within 1 inch, or it can target an enemy terrain marker like a shadow marker, web marker, or underbrush marker, drop a friendly ski marker into base contact with that terrain marker, and then remove the terrain marker. Targeting a terrain marker this way costs a card, but that may be a small price to pay for dropping a ski marker when you need one. Bultungin. The Bultungin received a couple changes overall. It no longer has Abundant Growth, which created an underbrush marker after deployment, and it lost Pack Mentality, which gave it a buff to its duels when it was near other Bultungin models. However, Now it is hard to kill and has favorable terrain, which lets it ignore severe terrain and gives it cover. The Bultungin's Forage bonus action has been replaced by the unique Homeward Bound bonus action, which removes a scheme marker and creates a terrain marker as long as that type of terrain marker is already somewhere else on the table and friendly to the Bultungin's crew. Since the Bultungin has both the Savage and Fey keywords, that terrain marker might be an Ice Pillar marker in a Euripides crew, an Underbrush marker in a Titania crew, or something else entirely if hired out of keyword. Bloodwretch. The Bloodwretch received 2 small changes to make it a little more attractive in combat. On the front of the card, it gained the Hard to Kill ability. On the back, it now has the Furious Swipe bonus action that doesn't even require a card flip and does 1 damage to all models within 1 inch, friendly and enemy alike. Black Blood Shaman. The Black Blood Shaman's changes make it perhaps more versatile in a Nephilim crew. The Relish in Blood ability previously let the Shaman gain Grow tokens, so it could eventually replace itself with a larger minion, usually a mature Nephilim model. Relish in Blood is now gone, replaced by the unique Ancient Ritual ability. This new ability lets the Black Blood Shaman remove a corpse marker after it moves into contact with it. If it does, a nearby Nephilim model can gain Focused +1 or a Grow token, but the Grow token is an option only for Size 1 models. Either way, the Black Blood Shaman cannot gain the Focused condition or the Grow token from this ability since it is a pulse, and pulses do not affect their sources. Balancing the Ancient Ritual a little, the pulse in the Blood Clot ability has been reduced from 3 inches to 2 inches. Since the Ancient Ritual removes a corpse marker to possibly give Focused, the Blasphemous Ritual bonus action, which does that same thing, is also gone. Outcasts. Drachen Trooper. The Drachen Trooper got several changes, so it's up to you to decide if they are an overall net positive or negative. Both his health and his soulstone cost dropped from 8 to 7. His movement, though, increased from 4 to 5. Perhaps that's related to the new containment suit he's wearing that he got from the Disease Containment Unit model released in Malifaux Burns. That new ability replaces Clear the Area and lets the Drachen Trooper ignore hazardous terrain and prevents him from gaining poison or injured. The back of his card received further changes. The knife is the same, but the flamethrower lost the flame wall trigger that creates a pyre marker. The Move or Burn tactical action and Burn It Down bonus action are also gone, leaving the Drachen Trooper with no tactical actions at all. However, the new Light It Up bonus action combines elements of the Clear the Area ability and the Move or Burn tactical action. This projectile attack drops a 2-inch shockwave marker that gives Burning +2 and removes any one type of marker other than scheme markers. The tome embedded in the stat guarantees the Move or Burn trigger, which lets friendly models relent to the shockwave. This gives them Burning +2, but ends one other condition they may have. Barbaros. This outcast Nephilim may have the most intriguing change in the errata. Specifically, he has a new keyword, Returned. No other model currently has this keyword, so it hints that we may see Lilith come out of Deadman's hand before too long. His willpower and defense stats have flipped, with defense now at 6 and willpower now at 5. His armor, black blood, and cagefighter abilities are unchanged, but his Nephilim Loyalist ability has expanded from barring him from crews led by Nekema to barring him from crews containing Nekema at all. He lost his regeneration ability, but now has the unique Brood Fighter ability that heals him 1 when he activates, just like regeneration, but goes a step further. If he's already at full health when he activates, he can choose to have a nearby friendly model move up to 2 inches. He also has the Caught in the Ring ability now, which prevents other models he's engaging from targeting anyone but him with attack actions. On the back of his card, he has lost the challenge bonus action, but Caught in the Ring has a similar effect. Winged Plague. This disgusting creature received just 2 changes, both to the front of its card. First, its movement increased from 5 to 6. The second change is to The Plague Spreads. Previously, the ability let this minion push 6 inches in the end phase toward a nearby enemy model that didn't have a blight token. Now during the end phase, the Winged Plague pushes up to 3 inches toward a model in line of sight without a blight token, but any models it winds up in base contact with now gain a blight token. Resurrectionists. Dr. McMourning, Insanitary. The only Resurrectionist model to receive changes in this errata is Dr. McMourning, Insanitary. The front of his card is unchanged. On the back, both Desperate Plot and Plastic Surgery have been amended. If an experimental keyword model attaches an appendage upgrade with Desperate Plot, it now must discard any current appendage upgrades it currently has. The action has a RAM embedded in the stat now, though, which guarantees the Hidden Bombs trigger. The Plastic Surgery bonus action became a little trickier in that the target number for the action increased from 12 to 13, and it is now restricted to friendly models with the experimental keyword. Otherwise, it operates exactly as it did before. 10 Thunders. Fuhatsu. Perhaps the most widely felt changes in this errata were made to Fuhatsu. This henchman has been demoted to the rank of Enforcer, and his cost decreased from 9 to 8 accordingly. He no longer has the rapid fire ability which let him fire his Gatling gun an extra time, but instead now has the covering fire ability first seen on the Gatling Gunner guild minion, and which allows a nearby model to take a general action other than charge after Fuhatsu fails a duel with his Gatling gun targeting an enemy model. He also lost the Scatter tactical action, but his Gatling gun now has an embedded Crow to go with the positive modifier in the stat. This guarantees he can choose the new Reckless Aim trigger, which lets him draw a card after failing his duel with a Gatling gun, which then, of course, can be paid as the cost for covering fire. Terracotta Warrior. This minion went through so many changes, it's practically a different model. Its health was decreased from 4 to just 3. Both of its previous abilities, Armor and Ruthless, are gone. It has the Numbskull ability, which was previously found on only 2 Resurrectionist models, and keeps the Terracotta Warrior from gaining any conditions at all. It now has the Take the Hit ability, which costs a card to use, but isn't such a big deal when it gets to replace that card at the end of its activation with Nefarious Pact. Even though its health is now just 3, the unique 10,000 Strong ability offsets that a little. This ability says the Terracotta Warrior cannot be healed, but all damage it takes is reduced to 1 every time. Like the Neverborn Changeling, the Terracotta Warrior has lost the Just Like You action, which means that action now can be found only on the Malifaux Child, an outcast enforcer. Mold of the Other remains and is unchanged, and Clay Fist has a higher stat and a range of 1, giving the warrior an engagement range beyond its base. Those are the model and stat card changes from the February 2022 errata. Your feedback, opinions, and analysis are welcome in the comments. If you haven't already, join us on Patreon for early, ad-free access to all new content, and be sure to stop by the Malifaux University gift shop for the latest in Malifaux-themed shirts, hoodies, drinkware, and more. Links are in the notes below. And remember, play friendly games, keep it simple, and have fun.